Mental structures and power. The mind is complex, and it grows increasingly complex with each new experience and realization. Those aspects we normally observe, though important, are but the surface elements of a vast multidimensional inner reality. However, by looking deeply into these surface elements, we cannot help but find our way into the deeper picture. Because our conscious thoughts arise out of the greater depths of mind, they must necessarily serve as pathways into the deeps. The normally hidden powers and structures of the mind need not remain hidden. In fact, it is our destiny to unravel the deepest mysteries. There is no danger that the immensity of the mind will unexpectedly flood us and overwhelm us. At the same time, its mysteries will not retreat from those who diligently search within. After all, our minds are part of us, and nothing can keep us from ourselves. In learning to penetrate the recesses of the mind more deeply, we will begin with the obvious and move toward the hidden. Mental gestalts and symbols. When we communicate with others, we use symbols. Words, pictures, signs are the most common types of symbols we employ in this process. In a similar manner, we communicate with the deeper portions of mind through symbols. When we perceive an object or experience an event, we do so, at least in the physical arena, through the medium of our physical senses. Our physical perceptions are translated immediately into symbols. When we see a tree, we don't put the tree into our minds. Instead, we form the mental image of a tree and attach to it the word symbol tree, underquotes. But this is not the end of the process. As we adopt or use a symbol, we set up and establish thought forms and energy gestalts. In the case of the perception of a tree, we generate and arrange mental energy into a structure and vibration which, whenever it is accessed, will bring into our conscious mental space the picture and the word symbol for tree. We do not consciously manipulate and structure the mental energies. Unconscious processes are involved in establishing the necessary energy fields in accordance with the dictates of the conscious mind. In the same way, when we draw on information stored within the mind, we do not consciously access the energy fields. These fields are indeed called forth as a result of our intent, but we perceive them almost always in symbols and images that camouflage the energy fields and to which we can relate from the perspective of our physical focus. If we wish to communicate the information within these energy fields to others, we use physical symbols such as words or pictures. The symbols become our handles on the unperceived fields of energy. We are immersed in the environment, that is our physical reality system. So long as this is the case, one of our primary purposes is to relate to that environment and through our relationship to it to increase our understanding of ourselves and our reality. Therefore, our current focus of consciousness employs symbols and images derived from our experiences within this reality system. Since the conscious mind is engaged primarily with our physical involvements, it must use symbols derived from the physical. In other reality systems, we use different symbols. There are both private symbols and symbols common to all of us. Furthermore, each symbol generally has more than one meaning. The image of a king might symbolize authority and order to one person and tyranny to another. Personal experiences, concepts, and associations determine the way an individual employs any particular symbol. We do not generally think of our thoughts as being symbols because we do not directly perceive what is behind them. Similarly, we do not recognize that words are symbols because they are so intricately connected with the meanings they convey. Nevertheless, behind the thoughts that we mentally see and hear are the fields of energy that carry the primary impressions of our experiences. It is important to remember the distinction between the symbol and the energy field because when we investigate such things as telepathy, desire, and controlled creation of mental gestalts, this relationship will be critical. Types of complex mental structures. There are several types of energy patterns within the mind. Each of these is closely related to the others, and the divisions, though convenient, are somewhat arbitrary. However, examining the types will help to make the structure of mind more understandable. Intellectual structures. Certain complex energy patterns, like certain thought forms, may be viewed as simple repositories of information. Mathematical concepts, logical sequences, and simple data are examples. When you register the simple fact that in your top dresser drawer are socks and underwear, you are simply processing and storing information. Similarly, when you memorize the multiplication tables, you are storing information. This type of mental structure may be likened to the memory banks or programming commands of a computer. A computer attaches no value to its information. It simply stores and organizes it in such a way that it is accessible when needed. The various different intellectual structures are quite numerous and they vary in complexity, but the principle of the simple storage of information remains the same. These intellectual structures are relatively static energy fields. They are the closest thing in the mind to a solid or unchanging structure of energy. By themselves, they will go nowhere unless we call them forth and set them into motion. They have no inherent magnetic properties. Emotionally charged energy structures. When you add an emotional charge to a mental structure, new forces are set in motion. What was a simple, stable mental structure become a force field or an energy field in flux. Currents and polarities are activated and the forces of attraction and repulsion come into play. Energy patterns established by emotions cause mental structures to interact. On the simplest level, you could visualize pleasant memories as being stored in one region and unpleasant memories in another. Of course, this is an oversimplification, considering the complexities of mental structures, but the principle is sound. Rarely do we have an experience that is not accompanied by some degree of emotion. Some experiences carry a high emotional charge, and others carry a low one. Energy structures with a high emotional charge not only impinge upon more mental activities than those with a low charge, they are also more readily accessible to the conscious mind. We easily recall those experiences we felt strongly about. Emotionally charged mental structures also play a stronger role in regard to operational patterns that affect your behavior or your reactions. If you have an unpleasant time at someone's house, you will be more likely to avoid that place than you would if nothing of particular interest occurred. Likewise, your reactions to different situations will to some degree be determined by emotionally charged mental patterns that relate to those situations. Emotions and feelings are of many kinds. Value judgments partake of the same kind of active energies as do those feelings we normally call emotions. The value you place on information or experience contributes to the organization of your mental patterns. You draw on the ideas, experiences, and beliefs you value and hold to be good, while those which you consider to be of little value recede into the background of your mind. Subjectively valuable beliefs and concepts are grouped together and become a part of your operational framework, and they determine what new experience you seek out. The magnetic properties and polarities of emotionally charged mental structures and gestalts also serve to draw new information and experiences into your mind through non-physical channels. Out of the collective unconscious and other regions of the non-physical dimensions, new ideas and concepts are attracted through the charges and polarities of these mental patterns. Experiences related to mental patterns you value will be drawn to you, others will be excluded. For example, if you value telepathic communication, you will more likely be aware of instances in which it occurs. If you do not value it or believe in it, you will exclude the awareness of such instances from your conscious mind. Emotionally charged mental structures are highly active. Unlike intellectual structures, they automatically play a part in what you do, believe, and draw to yourself. Their potency may be increased or reduced. They may serve to increase your fulfillment in your life, or they may wear you down with conflicts. They are dynamic, and when I discuss controlled mental creations and desires, you will see that they also are quite powerful. Conceptual systems. Conceptual systems may be viewed as a higher octave of intellectual structures. Philosophical systems, scientific formulas, and mathematical equations are examples of conceptual systems. Although emotional energies may be applied or appended to them, and in and of themselves, they are basically complex informational structures. The energy that composes them does not have the strong attractive and repulsive force of emotion, but they may serve as operational parameters. Whereas an intellectual structure or information gestalt may be viewed as a simple, static structure, conceptual structures are like massive gridworks of relatively stable energies. They are composed of matrices of interlocking energies, but their currents and polarities are comparatively weak. Structurally, these conceptual systems may exclude other thought forms that do not fit their pattern, but this is not due to a repulsive force. You have a conceptual matrix energy structure comprised of a set of scientific rules, for example, any assertion or information packet that does not fit into the structure of this system, that does not accord with its inherent rules, cannot be assimilated into the system. In a Newtonian system, you cannot have relativity in the dimension of time, but in an Einsteinian system, you can. Similarly, although conceptual structures do not noticeably attract other mental energies, they do have parameters and forces that determine what may be added to them. A philosophical system that denies the existence of God would accept a proposition supporting a random universe. If we accept logics as the criterion of truth, then any logical statement will be accepted as valid. Conceptual structures, like intellectual structures, may be made more dynamic through the imposition of emotional energies. However, when this takes place, the structure essentially moves into a new category. We are then dealing with a system of belief. Belief systems. For us, probably the most critical and important mental energy structure is the one which composes our belief system. Our key operational framework is our belief system, and it is the most comprehensive system our minds contain, since it must serve as the primary intermediary between our consciousness and the world we experience. As author Beatrice Brutu puts it, to account for our total experience of seeking and finding contact with reality, we must postulate both that there is a common ground beyond our individual and collective manipulations of experience, and that our access to it is mediated by our conviction systems, the psychic grids. Close quotes. If you combine the matrix structure of a conceptual system with the charges, polarities, and currents that emotions bestow, then you will have a good picture of this energy structure of a belief system. Such a system involves a highly complex matrix structure that has all of the attractive and repulsive qualities of an emotionally charged mental structure. Only these charges and currents are necessarily much more complex. Everything we perceive or do is filtered through our operational belief systems. The currents, patterns, fields, and structures composing these systems affect every thought and feeling that comes to us, as well as our every perception. Our beliefs both limit and free our conscious awareness. They limit us to those experiences and mental patterns that agree with them, and they free us to experience and understand those things that fall within their range or which that energy structure can support. The subject of personal beliefs is dealt with more thoroughly in the ensuing chapters, since it plays such an important role in our relationships with reality and in the nature of our personal mental patterns. For now, simply recognize that your general, overall mental patterns are organized primarily according to your system of beliefs. The field properties of this system governs your life. Powers of creation. It requires energy to establish, maintain, and operate the energy fields within the mind. When you choose to believe something, you use power to impress your mind with the energy patterns composing that belief. Thinking requires mental energy. Visualizing, imagining, sorting, and assimilating information, all activities of the mind, necessitate the use of some type of inner power. The power to which consciousness and mind have access is truly infinite. It is the power of creation itself, the power and the energy that compose all that is. The only factor that limits your access to this power is the composition of your own mental energy patterns. Spiritually oriented people often condemn the use of power for personal ends, but we cannot exist without power. Power holds the body together, and it enables us to move, think, and feel. Love is power, strength is power, and thought is power. The power of creation is the gift of the gods. Our access to this power gives us both great freedom and great responsibility. What then is the nature of this power as it impinges on our private realities? How do we access it, and how do we use it? How does it affect us? And how do we affect reality when we employ it? Finally, what are the phases of this power? Will and intent. Each of us mobilizes energy primarily through the use of the will. Our attitude toward free will or determinism can affect this process. Believers in determinism assert that ultimately we have no power to choose, to act, or to believe. They contend that everything is determined by forces beyond our control, and that at the most we are mere observers of the spectacle of life. Adherents to the doctrine of free will contend that we do indeed have the power to make choices, and that our actions can be and are determined according to our own volition. Now, on the surface, you may think that such philosophical issues have no practical bearing on your life. However, the question of free will versus determinism involves a basic belief pattern. If you believe that you are at the mercy of your environment, that events just happen to you and you can do nothing about them, then you are operating from a framework of self-imposed powerlessness. In such a case, you are maintaining a critically important belief structure within your mind which holds that you are ultimately powerless to affect any significant change in your life. Few of us clearly adhere to either the doctrine of free will or the doctrine of determinism. Usually there is a blending. You may believe that you are at the mercy of your environment while still feeling that you can make small choices and changes within your life scenario. But to whatever degree you believe that the power that fashions your life lies outside of yourself, to that same degree do you limit your capacity for effective action. Your will is your active power. It is your purpose and your intention set into motion. It is the directional mobilization of your consciousness. Since we are multidimensional beings, our will, purpose and intent operate at levels other than the physical. But for practical purposes, I will discuss these from our current focus of earth-directed consciousness. When you intend something, you activate your will. You instruct it to set forces in motion in accordance with your intention. By intending something, choosing something, or deciding something, you mobilize the energies at your disposal and an inner process of implementation begins to occur. But as we all know, our will and intent are sometimes thwarted. Your will does not override your operational framework of mental energies. You may sincerely intend one morning to be more confident than usual during the course of the day, but if you strongly believe that you lack confidence, then your intention will be thwarted. If this operational framework were not there, we would find it much easier to effect change in our psychological structures. For example, we could change our attitudes about ourselves with the greatest of ease. In the Gospel of Luke, we read, "And I tell you, ask, and it will be given you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you." Is this not another way of saying, intend and forces will be set into motion to accomplish your intent? Your will is your power, and your mind governs that power. Desire as power. Your desires are diluted and masked versions of your intent. As mentioned earlier, your desires are mental structures with magnetic properties. In order to establish and maintain desires within your mind, you must employ your will to give them energy and to shape them. You must charge them. They grow in strength to the degree that you imbue them with the increased amounts of energy through concentration, repetition, and emotion. It should be easy to see the difference between the statements, "I want that," and "I will have that." Willing carries with it a determination that is not present in simple wanting. When you want something, there is often a degree of doubt as to whether or not we will get it. When we will something, we bring more direct and more substantial energy to bear than we do when we just want it. Attitude is another factor that makes desires weaker than concentrated intent. Desiring involves a longing for something that is seen as out of reach, or at least not present. Often when we desire something, we concentrate on the desired object and also on the fact that we do not have it. Mental energy then becomes divided between wanting and believing that we do not have. It should be obvious that there is a distinct difference between the two approaches of desire and will. Desires involve a blending of the will with the complex and manifold machinations of the mental matrix. Greater complications arise under these conditions. Competing desires, conflicting belief patterns, changing desires, and mental uncertainties entail a fluctuation of mental energies that makes the objects of our desires seem hard to attain. But as we shall see, there are ways to increase the likelihood of our desires coming to fruition. Concentrated mental energy. Power may be concentrated within the mind in a variety of ways. Emotional energy intensifies desires, fears, and reaction patterns. But as briefly mentioned, mental energy may be concentrated and intensified without necessarily employing the energy of motion, though most energy patterns within the mind have at least a little emotional energy in them. Their subjective importance implies some degree of emotional attachment. When we employ the will, to whatever degree, toward establishing or generating a thought form, gestalt, or a mental stream, we are applying power to mental matrix. It takes some effort to think. Some thoughts seem to surface unbidden, but these are responding to patterns of energy and power that have long been in place. Somewhere along the line, you introduce a pattern of thinking which continues on, partially as a result of the initial power and partially from the continued attention you pay to these surfacing thoughts. Every time you entertain a thought and every time you give attention to an emotion, you increase its power. By attention, you consciously direct your mental energies. You may address some problem, you may dwell on the image of a loved one, or you may impress your mind with the subject of a book you have been reading. Later, although you may be occupied with some other task, that subject or thought upon which you have recently dwelt and which you have invested so much attention returns to you unbidden. It has, at least temporarily, gained enough power through your attention so that it is not far from your conscious awareness. Most of the time, the process of applying power in establishing and maintaining thought forms and mental structures takes place automatically and with a relatively low level of conscious attention. Habitual patterns of thinking become ingrained to the point that at times we wonder how we could think in any other way. But once you become aware of what you are doing when you direct your attention toward particular thoughts and emotions, then you have the power to make dramatic changes. You are free to choose what thoughts and feelings you will entertain. You may imbue them with however much importance and power you think they deserve. And as I discuss later, you may thereby have significant effect upon the nature of your own experiences. The power of a mental structure may be diffused and dissipated, thereby reducing or eliminating its influences in your life, or it may be increased, thereby giving that mental structure greater effectiveness. The will gives us the power to direct our attention, and attention focuses and funnels energy into and through the mind. We each have the power and freedom to direct the nature of our inner lives, thereby influencing our outer lives. Wise and discriminate applications of mental power can do more than move mountains. So, how do we increase our personal power? How do we improve upon our abilities to order mind's patterns? The infinite domains of reality obviously contain more power than we could ever need. Let's now take a look at the basics of accessing the power that surrounds. Accessing power. Obviously, the power or energy which is tapped through the mind is not a physical power. But so long as we are focused in the physical arena, it must make its presence known there. This energy which is at the disposal of the mind and the psyche cannot properly be said to belong to the user. It is the force of all reality to be used responsibly, but never owned. Power is neither good nor evil, it simply is. As with all things, its value comes from the nature of its application. I am addressing the tapping of power for several purposes: increased understanding, greater effectiveness in management of one's own life, with an eye toward the betterment of all, and the attainment of a harmonious, fulfilling relationship with all of reality. Marshalling your forces. The first key to accessing greater mental power lies in the proper use of what you already have at your disposal. As mentioned, every thought and mental pattern is composed of energy and is strengthened through attention and use. What is the nature of your personal mental structure? Is it an efficiently operating system? If you have attempted to explore your mental state, perhaps through some of the methods mentioned in Chapter 3, you have probably noticed that your thoughts are scattered and for the most part uncontrolled. One moment you may think about what happened in the recent past, perhaps dwelling on work that day. In the next moment, you may think about what you are going to do in the future. From moment to moment, your thoughts probably jump from one subject to another with no apparent order. And what about your beliefs? Do you have a cohesive, well-founded system of beliefs? Or do conflicting beliefs operate simultaneously? Do you even know what you believe? Imagine for a moment a complicated machine. Imagine that this machine has some imbalance or faulty timing within the mechanism. When it is running slowly, you don't notice the imbalances. When you speed things up a bit, you begin to notice a vibration or an inconsistency in its performance. Now imagine that you gradually add more and more power to this machine. As it goes faster and faster, the vibration increases. Soon it's bouncing and moving about. Finally, it reaches a point where it has so much power and is running so fast that it literally shakes itself apart. The more power that is put into a disordered system, the more apparent the faults and weaknesses will become. The mind may be compared to such a machine, but the mind fortunately is self-regulating and will permit no more energy into its system than the system is capable of handling. There are, of course, instances of overload, but they are the exception. Therefore, if you wish to increase your ability to access and use mental power, You must first tune the system so that it is capable of handling that power. You must take whatever adjustments are necessary to ensure an efficient mental structure. If your attention is forever scattered, then your current mental powers are seriously diluted. The first order of business is to exercise your power of concentration so that you can bring the focus of your attention to one point and hold it there. It is the same principle as that of a magnifying glass that focuses the sun's rays. Focusing the light brings great power to bear on one point. With the mind, the device used for focusing is not a glass, but the faculty of concentration or attention directed by will. Developing powers of concentration is equivalent to developing muscular strength. Anyone can do it. It merely takes exercise. The more effort and time you put into practicing concentration, the more your powers of concentration will increase. It does not take inhuman amounts of concentration to control your thoughts. It takes just a little more focus than what the habitually scattered and roving mind is used to. Many people are already able to concentrate for short periods and need only to stir up motivation. Without the ability to concentrate, you cannot put an end to those thought patterns that are injurious to you, nor can you implement new and beneficial patterns. Furthermore, if your attention is forever scattered, you have grown used to seeing your mental energies dissipated without achieving any significant effects. How much that you idly think about do you really want to think about? Some of your energy goes into the entertaining of those thoughts. If they do you no good, you are wasting your power. You can act only here and now, whether in the physical or non-physical arena. You can assess and calculate as a result of thinking about the past and future, but action must always be taken in the present moment. Marshalling your forces into the present moment increases your ability to take effective action. Finally, it is critical that you assess your beliefs, and mental concentration will help you do this. Your operational parameters must permit you to expand your perspective and implement new beliefs. Your beliefs are self-fulfilling. You perceive what you believe. So beliefs are the principal key to your effectiveness and efficiency. Restructuring the mind. Once you have gained some proficiency in gathering your mental energies into the focus of the present moment, you can begin applying that energy to the task of mapping your mental matrix and making the necessary adjustments. The first and most practical place to begin is with your moment-to-moment flow of thoughts. Since your underlying beliefs, attitudes, feelings, and opinions are expressed there, the stream is clearly your first point of access to the deeper regions of mind. When the opportunity arises, focus your attention on the thoughts that come into your mind. You will need all of your available powers of concentration not only to catch the thoughts, but to hold them in your mental vision long enough to evaluate them clearly. What is it you are saying to yourself? What attitude or belief lies behind it? Does it reflect the kind of attitude you wish to hold? If it reveals a belief, what is the basis for that belief? Try to visualize that thought as an energy construction and then rotate it and look at it from all sides. Is it connected to other attitudes? And if so, what are they? Now, if you decide, after careful analysis, that a thought or mental pattern is not of a character that you wish to maintain, then you must begin the process of either dispersing it or rechanneling its energy. In order to do this, you must bring new mental energies to bear upon it. You must manipulate currents of power with your mind in such a way as to dismantle the structure of the thought which you are seeking to change. The power of dispersion and rechanneling must occur on two levels. On the first level, you deal with the surface thought itself. As you continue to hold the thought or pattern before your mental vision, think about why it is untenable or unwanted. If the thought has no firm basis in reality, explain to yourself why it does not. If it has a detrimental effect on your overall mental or emotional state, make that clear to yourself. If it is a thought which involves some negative attitude about the world, yourself, or other people, convince yourself that such a thought does no one any good. By exploring the untenability of a thought and by making its detrimental effects clear in your own mind, you are diffusing its power. If from a convincing, rational basis, you can firmly convince yourself that you do not want to entertain a particular mental pattern, you will be removing the support from that thought. From a structural viewpoint, you are systematically cutting the lines of power which feed that thought pattern. But this process must be done clearly and thoroughly. You must hold the thought pattern in the grip of your mental attention and look at it from every angle until you have found every line of power that feeds it and have effectually cut off those lines. Without these lines of force, the thought pattern will lose its ability to continue, and the remaining structural energy will disperse. In this way, you not only free the power which composes the structural pattern, you also stop the flow of valuable mental energies into it. Some thought patterns do not require total dispersion. They may need only to be adjusted or rechanneled. If they are basically sound and useful but are slightly tainted with unwanted or negative energies, then you must cut only those lines of force that contribute to their negative side. In other cases, a thought may be sound and positive, but of little use. In this case, examine why you are thinking about it at all. Is it because you are not thinking about anything else of greater importance, and your mind just wants to be busy with something? Chances are that it is there simply because your mind is not more profitably engaged. If so, then all you have to do is remove your attention from that thought, or banish it from your conscious awareness. If you find that you frequently entertain idle, useless thoughts, you may want to put your mental energies to better use. You can spend more time practicing your powers of concentration. Then you will employ the free energies of your mind for constructive purposes. Idle thoughts will dissipate, the energy that sustains them will be rechanneled and put to other uses. Or you may try exploring your idle thoughts to find their origin and then cut them off at their source. Some mental patterns, no matter how many times you cut off their lines of power, will resurface. If this is the case, you have an underlying belief pattern that is generating those mental patterns. Somewhere in your mental space, you have constructed an operational pattern that is pumping out attitudes, thoughts, and feelings in accordance with the pattern of thoughts. For example, imagine that you believe you are basically worthless. From time to time during the day, you may discover a variety of thoughts that originate from this theme. You can do nothing right. No one likes you. Other people are smarter or more capable than you. If you simply disperse the surface thoughts and do not attend to the underlying operational pattern, then those types of thoughts and feelings will inevitably return. You cannot cut the lines of power from the surface alone. You must assess, evaluate, and restructure belief patterns. This subject comes up again and again because it is of primary importance. Your surface, conscious thoughts can and do give valuable clues to the nature of your beliefs. When those thoughts are of an undesirable nature, then they are a call to examine your beliefs and to make changes. Changing beliefs is not easy because they involve operational patterns. They are imbued with a tremendous amount of mental power. They have been reinforced from minute to minute, possibly over the course of years. Much of your mental energy is invested in them, and much energy will be needed for their restructuring. But this cannot be done until you know their nature. Once you have managed to gain a clear picture of an unwanted belief pattern, you have two things to do. First, you must go through the process of making clear its untenable and undesirable nature. You must convince yourself that it is an operational pattern by which you no longer wish to operate, which has no value and is not sound. Second, you must replace that belief with one that deals with the same issue, but which addresses the issue from a direction you desire and is valid. In other words, you must replace a negative belief with a positive one. Once you have convinced yourself of the undesirable nature of an old belief and have clearly shaped a new positive one, begin to apply energy to implement the new belief. It is helpful to affirm or reinforce the new belief at least once every day. If you occasionally discover thoughts in your mind that reflect the old belief, then banish them and reaffirm the new belief. It takes time and energy to implement the new, but once it is accomplished, it will effectively redirect enormous amounts of energy in your favor. This exercise will likely begin as an intellectual one while your emotional energies still side with the old belief. To overcome this, act on the new belief. If possible, take some action each day that accords with the nature of your new belief. If, for example, your new belief affirms your sense of self-worth, treat yourself to something unexpected that you enjoy, or assert your opinion in a situation where in the past you would have remained silent. In some way, take action that expresses or affirms your new attitude. This will redirect emotional energies into the new operational pattern. Eventually, the new belief will become self-fulfilling and will naturally reinforce itself. Tapping the power around you. Power and energy are everywhere, in everything. There is power in the storm that rages through the night, and there is a gentle, insistent power in the growing grass. There is power in the relentless surging of the ocean's waves and in the radiance of the sun. Can we, with the mind, draw upon such power? Can we draw upon the infinite, powerful resources which surrounds us? Behind every physical force of nature, there is a non-physical force. What we perceive as physical reality rises out of an immensely powerful non-physical reality. Just as we can physically transmute physical energies, so can we non-physically transmute non-physical energies. The key to transmuting and tapping these vast powers lies in identification. We often place an imaginary boundary around ourselves and say, "This is where I end, and there where the other begins." But the self does not have to be so limited. The self, with capital S, is boundless and there are no closed systems. Any limits to the self are arbitrary and self-imposed. Psychically, we can reach out and identify with the forces around us. All things are connected. Each part of the whole depends upon every other part. In the last analysis, there is only one of us, and that one has an infinite number of faces. If you can allow your sense of self to be flexible enough, you can consciously realize and draw upon the connections that exist between you and all else. Have you ever stood looking out the window at a powerful thunderstorm and felt its exhilarating power within your own being? Have you ever looked at the starry sky and felt its immensity penetrate into your very soul? Such moments contain glimpses of the ways in which you can draw upon the power that surrounds you. Accessing such power does not mean taking power from some place and claiming it as your own. It means rather recognizing the oneness that already exists. It involves letting yourself expand to encompass more than you knew yourself to be. You must begin by believing that this is possible and that you are capable of realizing that possibility. And finally, you must make the effort. Employ your imagination. Attune yourself to your subtle senses. And remember that you are dealing with non-physical energies. Believe that the force with which you are identifying is filling your inner being. You will never be able to understand the nature of power that is available to you through this technique until you try it. The mind impinges upon and connects with non-physical systems as thoroughly as the physical body connects with the physical system. Later I go into this topic, but for now, bear in mind that you will be dealing with more than lifeless energy. You will also be dealing with the consciousness inherent within this energy. A deeper understanding of the possibilities of this technique will develop if you look at the ways mental and other non-physical energies interact. Also, you will better understand your own mental matrix by understanding the effects of your mental patterns on yourself and on others. The next chapter addresses this topic.